I guess we might as well get started. Does anybody mind? I just want to welcome you. Congratulations on being nominated, and hopefully you've already put some energy into this for the October deadlines. But go through the full show. But before that, I just wanted to name a few names here. Patricia, who's just turned into a BSA symbol, is our there she is again, is our liaison with the BSA, and she handles all things fellows, anything to do with the college but primarily for the BSA, not for the AIA in general. And then this year invited a few people who were invested last year in San Francisco. And Diana Nicholas is here if you want to wave your hand so you jump out of the screen. Justin Crane and Andrea Love. So the three of them went through this whole process already, were successful, and have been through the investiture. This is the background for my call today, and have gone through. Oh, and Ted Talukian is just come online, and so he's the fourth of that crew who all were honored last year. But the other reason they're on here is they can answer more current questions, I think, about submissions and some of the things they heard in their own process and things they worked on. It's been a while since I went through the actual step-by-step of it. And so I thought it'd be a good idea that you all might actually know their faces. I'll volunteer them to answer questions over time in between now and October if they don't mind. But other than that, they're here. They can answer questions during this presentation. I think if you want to pop up and ask a question while we're talking, that's fine too. I'm going to try and share my screen here, and we'll go through the PDFs that the AIA has provided, and then we'll take a quick look at the website. So are you now looking at my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And I can no longer see you all. Oh, wait, you're on my other screen. I'm in better shape than I thought. So this is a presentation, a PDF that the AIA has prepared. It's on their website. You may have seen it already. If not, you can go to it. You can download it. Just want to warn you, this is last year's site. This is the one where at the end of last year, they start to update it, but it's wrong. And I'll show you a little later where there's just a few critical things like the deadline day is wrong. So I've notified the AIA, we'll see what they do. But in the meantime, we'll just go through this show. So this is submitting for fellowship. There's going to be a quick overview of the key things, the important dates, which are wrong in here, but right on the website, what your submission will be, how you choose your objects, talk a little bit about the jury because it may or may not help the way you write your particular area, and then some resources that are available from the AIA. And then if we have questions and answers, we can do it then. But I think we're a small enough group. And if you've been stumbling or questioning certain things already, we can go ahead and talk about it. Most people aren't aware, but in the early 50s, the AIA sort of restructured, and the College of Fellows was born around that time. So it's been around for 70 plus years and represents about 3% of the members each year. We've had classes that have gone from 70, I think the most recent one was only 70, I believe, up to 100 and some. But it's only about 3% of the AIA. There's 3,000 living fellows in the country right now. The school, the college does have a mission. I think to a large extent, we are a networking group. It's a friendly group of folks. Most of us know each other, within our chapters. But the bigger goal is to advance the profession of architecture. And the sense is that people who've excelled in some area or another are out there in the public's eye, and it's good to support the fellowship and the work that the fellows are doing to reinforce in the public's eye what a broad range of ideas and activities architecture involves. More and more, we've been involved in mentoring young architects, and there are several programs that are being developed locally and nationally for mentoring. So this is a little bit of this is the year before last, when 219 candidates submitted and 88 were elevated. That was 40%, exactly the same 40% this year. So it's not a horrible bar because you have to be nominated in the first place. You have a certain level of experience. So it's a pretty select group going in. One of the things, and this is a good point to make this, in the second year, a third of the jury changes, your position and the way you're processed through the jury changes. And it makes sense, like even a building award, to submit again. So once you've done this and submitted the first time, you can just resubmit 2 more times. You can add letters if you feel the need to make new points. And the AIA is very good at giving you feedback if you don't make it. So it's worthwhile taking advantage of that. I just noticed that Angela has joined. If you want to wave your hand. Another from last year's grad investor crop, a person who can answer questions today and if you want to touch base over time. Anyway, the point I was making was the second and third year, far less people submit in those categories, but the percentages of those who succeed continues to be a relatively high percentage. So it's very worth it once you do all this work the first time to come back more and more. You can also look at the second bunch of bullets here is the objects. Number 1 is design, and number 2 is practice. So practice is far and away the biggest single category that people are submitting in. There's more competition, but there's a lot more variety in how you define what practice means. Object 1 is design. So there are some differences in how you would submit. And a lot of people, when they do come back another year, some of the advice is often, maybe you should move from design to practice or from practice to design or something else. The other 3 objects are related societies, government work, teaching, research, education. And we'll get into some specific descriptions of each of those. Hopefully you've decided by now where you are. These are the important wrong dates, so don't pay attention to this thing. The really important one is the things are due on October 5th, not October 6th. So if you download this form, just make sure you go and look at the actual higher level of the website that says October 5th. So there's a lot of things in this slide, and I'll try to condense it a little bit on what you may think of as no-brainers. The submission should be clear and concise. You should talk about results and document the influence on the profession. I'll say the word now, ripple effect. They use ripple effect constantly through here. But the idea is they want to, this is not a design award. They're not evaluating the quality of the design. They're looking at the fact that things that you're contributing to the practice, to design, to the institute, to any impacts the profession, is replicated, is spread around, is reported on, it's written about in articles, they've got awards, but a number of ways to prove that what you've done has had an impact on the profession. You need to tell the whole story about who you are, what you accomplished, whether you're talking about you in general in the first part of the submission, or whether you're talking about projects. What did you do? What was your influence on a project? Why that's significant, and how the profession or society or a community benefit of what you do. Proving it here is pictures, words, writing, reference letters, a whole host of things that essentially prove it. As far as eligibility goes, this has changed in recent years. You have to have been in good standing for at least 10 years. They don't have to be cumulative membership in the AIA. We had periods of time in 08 and other sort of crises in the profession where we got rid of the 10 continuous years and added it up to 10 cumulative years. There is a membership history, AIA membership history spot on the website where you can check and see if they acknowledge you, mainly because they're keeping track of your CEUs. I think this is just a variation on that. Make sure you meet the eligibility. It's the number one way people are clipped off at the very beginning after they've done all the hard work. The other thing is getting nominated. I think what Patricia will, if you ask her, will send you the nomination papers. You can either be nominated by 10 members, 5 fellows, or your chapter. We're a pretty large chapter. We actually have a membership nominating committee. You've all been nominated at one time or another. So we'll just produce for you that nomination form that you add to the rest of the submission. There is some feeling that being nominated by a chapter is better, or people will point out to notable exceptions who were nominated by members. Certainly in smaller chapters, that's the only way to get nominated often. Volunteer chapters do not have as robust a membership or honors and awards program. So these are the 5 sections of your nomination. And this is really a lot of work. I assume you're looking at already. Everybody can tell you who's already been through it that it's great to have it afterwards, but it was work to get it. There's the section, which is your elevator speech and your page of overall summary, your executive summary. There's a sponsor letter who sponsor manages this. We'll talk specifically about them. Section 2 is the bulk of your work, which is essentially your vitae. And then there's 3, which is examples of specific exhibits. 5 buildings or more, or programs you've been involved with, or projects you've done. And then finally, the reference letters. And for the life of me, I can't remember right now whether it's 5 or 7 reference letters. You guys remember? I think it was 7. Okay. And then if you submit a second year, you can add 2 more letters. So again, generic things here, as well as a few specifics. The sponsor letters, 1 page, killer letter, write it over and over, and you know what the sponsor letter says because you're writing it together. The reference letters are strong and specific, and you don't know what they say because they send them through a confidential second source. You can, however, talk to them ahead of time, and by all means, make them aware of what your elevator speech is, make them aware of all the points you're making in your summary, and make sure they all don't touch the same points over and over. So you could tell, but in the end, they write that, and it's private. Should be well organized. 40-page limit. This was the breakthrough several years ago to put a limit on the pages. I think it's a jury's request. They're 8.5 by 11. Their landscape format permitted because, as we're all familiar with now, they sit in a room and look at a screen. And so you're at a disadvantage if you do it in a vertical format. If you do a vertical format and try and do a lot of 2-page spreads, you kind of miss the drama of a good bigger vertical page. 10 point font minimum, high quality images, and they don't mention it, but images are frequently helped with data associated with them, whether it's a simple caption or a north arrow or a statement of what it's presenting that may not be clear to the naked eye. They want to see you're consistent. They want to see you had leadership in whatever you're claiming, and they would like to see the results came out of this. So the sponsor, hopefully you all have sponsors. Sponsors key, they have to be an AIA member or an FAIA member. The jury's all FAIA members, so they may or may not be more aware of other FAIAs. But there are notable exceptions, notable examples of people either way who've gotten a sponsor. The real thing is the sponsor. It's more important that the sponsor helps you out than is famous. Famous sponsors have a tendency not to go over very. They need to know you well. They need to write about it. The jury recommends it's not from your own firm. They may be doing it for marketing reasons more than anything else, as opposed to you. Your sponsor is no problem if your sponsor is sponsoring somewhere else, as long as it doesn't sound like they're writing the same letter for both of you, which has been very notable for some more senior, more well-known people who get asked by 6 or 7 people to be their sponsor. So maybe 2, as long as they can really tailor it to knowing you and not knowing the other person. It'll show up as the same sponsors twice. You guys work the letter together, they assist you in crafting the submission, and they actually act as the shepherd for your reference writers. We're assuming that you really want to keep honing your pitch and not chasing down reluctant reference writers. I always suggest people have a reference writer and a spare in hand who knows that they're there, but knows they'd be saving your life at the last minute if they're willing to do it. Everybody has a story on the scary letter that didn't come in time. Sponsor letter gets addressed to the jury chair. It's 1 page. It gets uploaded, and since you get to read it as well. And it very much is important that it sort of points out the logic behind your submission. You've personally made a statement, and you've got your summary. But if your sponsor can also say, this is why we did this is why we picked this is why these, note that these juries are from all around the country. Those are the kinds of things a sponsor can do that you can't do. So they shouldn't sound just like the 8th reference letter. So this is the summary page. This tends to be a 1 page. For some people, it's a 2 page. People write about when they're 3 years old and went into their first building. They ignore that altogether. They talk about their education, but they get into what they're talking about. They have their short, elevator speech. We recommend it not be more than, say, three salient big points you can make in elevator speech. Each of those can divide into 2 or 3 subtopics in the longer portion of your letter, and probably would, but they all build to one thing. And people it's so hard to limit yourself to just the examples of things you've done to reinforce your point, and not get too gleeful about the fact that you are a generalist and you've done all these other things. You can't pack it with all those other things. You need to be very concise in talking about what you've done for the profession. And now you see the ripple effect here. This says restate claims from the sponsor letter, but it sends the sponsor, they have to be in there because the sponsor letter is introducing these things, and you're celebrating them or enhancing them with the way you talk about them. Ripple effect. And now to prove your ripple effect, it's just more than you do in the office. You talk somewhere, you speak at ABX, you go to an AIA convention on a panel, you are in a publication, you're mentoring half a dozen students, you're engaged with a youth group, you've done service to the profession that's, with the AIA or NCARB or NAB or any number of groups that also takes you around the country. You've had geographic impact. Even usually recommend, when you're looking at your reference letters, if somebody moved away, grab them, because even though you worked with them here, they're being somewhere else talking about the stuff together is influential. Geographic impact and then legacy through others. Section 2, and so that tends to be, and it's not 100% the case, that last part tends to be prose. This part tends to be lists. And one of the problems with lists is deadly. These are the pages that get decorated with tiny pictures frequently to show you speaking at a lectern or working with a dozen students or speaking in a community group. Those are the kinds of things that are in here. And you'll say it again later in this show. If you look at projects, jury service, presentations, lectures, they ask that you not just list them in chronological order, that you cluster them according to what the kinds of things they would like to be. I think they want to get their head around, is this person a writer or a speaker, or is it a civic involvement? But I recommend using these 5 titles here as your headlines for the group. Because once they're in the mood of checking their lists and doing all this, it's very nice to use the organization. I mean, obviously you have other things you may have done that could use a headline or two. It's very nice to use their organization for this section because it's just a big bio. But you do have a lot of chance to show variety here. And it tends to be the place I've seen the most pictures. This is everything I just said is not here. Demonstrate broad influence, group the things together. And don't be shy here. You know, this is somebody wants to read it, get the idea important, and you don't need to make excuses or apologize or whatever. Just explain what you're doing and why you're excited about and where your passion came from and how it manifests itself. They do make a big point frequently about articles. If you wrote them, you should have them separate from the articles, that somebody wrote about you. So if the Globe did an article or one of the local trades, that's different than you wrote an article about something. Both of them are ripple effects, so good to have. It's good to have pictures of articles besides just a name. If you have 1 or 2 with the face in it, just like it's good to have a picture of you lecturing. And it kind of gets all the architects and jury like pictures. So I think, nobody gets too far away from being an architect. Section 3 is the exhibits. And this is if you were a design person where you'd put your 5 to 7 design examples and you really elaborate on them. If you're coming in under education or lecture or writing or research or some of those things, community involvement, you would put those pictures first. If you've made the case for yourself as somebody who's actively engaged in some kind of community effort or some way to reorganize your office or some new technology that's spreading across the country that you've been involved with, those are the pictures you put first. I still recommend a few building projects, particularly if they reinforce the points you're making about, you're doing K through 12s and you're focused on community resource centers. Show some resource centers to go with, show the buildings to go with those resource centers. You're showing, advanced photovoltaic work you've been doing, show those kinds of things and show some buildings that use them. Diagrams are good, particularly in the non-design areas, to make the point that you're trying to make. And then finally, these reference letters. Oh, this is 5 letters. 7 must be after. I think, is that the maximum exhibits? Anyway, make sure your writers write AIA and FAA after their name if they are those things. Oh, maybe it's 7 letters total, 5 have to be AIA. But I know a couple people last year were disqualified because the people were AIA but didn't sign an AIA, which was rather unfortunate. And then point C here, each reference should focus on 1 to 2 points from your summary statement. And that's why I say when you write your summary statement, you got sort of 3 parts to it. And any one part might have 2 or 3 subparts. You got to tell your reference letters which one you're expecting out of them. Works with communities from somebody, unbelievable service to a client for somebody who's a client. So we're trying to make these reference writers diverse. They're somebody you taught with, somebody that you taught, somebody you worked for, somebody who's a client, however you can to get that sort of variety, go for it. But make sure they don't all write great person, good designer, works for the community. Because if you get 7 letters that all sound like they're trying to cover the whole, they'll all sound alike. You can't do that much in one page. But if you can write 7 letters that sound like a really broad-based person who's got their fingers on the whole pulse of the spectrum of ways to influence the built environment, then that will work better. They should act like they know you. They should be connected. And even here they're now saying it in type. Avoid big names who have no specificity or little substance. They do a lot less work. It's fair enough. So what will happen procedurally, you'll send them a link. They'll upload their letter to this link, and you'll get an email automatically back from the AIA when it's submitted. And then once they've all been submitted, you can submit your application. So no hard copies. We had somebody in our office, their letter writer was a little too senior and couldn't use the download. And so he mailed us one, and so we had to appeal that we will not use that letter writer. You don't have to get the letters. You can get 2 new letters, second and third year, but you roll over the old. And we're back to here quickly, clear, concise presentation. This is a good thing. You should see some of the bad ones. They are just crammed to the margins. But focus on results. Don't be shy. And does everybody have their objects? Is this something? Is anybody still thinking about their object? Any hands up? No. I don't think I'm gonna. I'll remind you. And if you're in the middle of it, design is pretty straightforward. Every exhibit you're going to do, somebody else has to sign off that you were largely responsible with a signature. So that's particularly good here. I do want to reward people. They are not judging design. A magazine cover with a picture of the building is a whole lot better than the picture of the building, just because somebody else has made the decision of the cover or an article or something like that. Even if it's about some specific aspect of technology, an article of the building is better than just a picture. Practice management is, practical management is the one that we've expanded the most. We used to have research and education in this category. We took it out 2 years ago so that we can expand practice to be both practice management and running and improving standards, and also technology and new technology. There's also been a real growth in specialty firms who are very focused on, exterior envelopes or alternative energy or a number of things. And we want those people still to have a category and a place to be. But still taking those others out and giving research and education its own category this at like 50% of the submissions, because as fast as we give it space, it grows. At the Institute, this is heavy in AIA involvement or NCARB or NAB or any other organizations that are more associated to the practice of architecture. Later, there's associations that are unrelated, but that you as an architect could be having impact on the profession. So public service, government, industry, or other organizations, you can be the key architect or the key built environment person in these other organizations, being recognized as an architect within the organization. And these are alternative careers and volunteers. These are not connected with environment. This is probably the smallest category. And you make the case that this helps the environment. And then finally, education, research, literature. We put the word "or" in there we inadvertently were making people think they had to do all three, get an F in this category, but that's not the case. The jury is 7 people. If you go to the website, these people are now selected. If you know somebody, absolutely do not contact them. That's the #1 way to get disqualified, is contacting Lisa Lampkin out of Dallas. Is the chair. R.K. Stewart was the chair for the folks who are on the line today when they got theirs. So just to let you know, if you get about I think what this was, 230 this year, 220, something like that, this past year, the individual jurors, there's 7 of them, so they divvy them up. So they 30 or 35 of these files, 40-page files. So it's a fair amount of work to slog through. But for these 30 that they've got, you're supposed to read it in great detail. They essentially become your patron, and they will present you to the rest of the people. So they are the patrons of these 30 people. Now, the jury is trying very hard to be very diverse. And so they're from all across the country. They also, the 7 people, every one of them is, they're not 3 in any one category. Every category has got 3 different ones. So you may be submitting for led an allied organization, and they're in for historic preservation. So your patron, chances are very great your patron's not in the same category you are, but they're aware that they're, trying to treat everybody the same. But, another reason I always recommend people submit a second time and a third time, because you get a different patron each time. And of course, it's a different jury. 3 of them will have 2 or 3 people have switched off. And somebody has to recuse themselves too if they know you, or if they're from your own state or the firm, obviously. And to make it even, if there are no recusals on somebody will be assigned a recusal. So there are equal numbers of votes for everybody. And they will take a look at the whole thing. Then it flips over to high speed, where they present your whole thing that you spent these 4 months putting together in 5 minutes. So, but they've already formed an opinion. So they're going to promote you as an absolutely, I'm a favorite, somebody's in the middle, and I'm not as inclined. They don't do that right away, but under probing, they do it. So they'll try to present very effectively. They're asked if it comes across, they're asked in the presentation. So sometimes people are evaluating, does it come across? Other times they're evaluating, is it important? And, unfortunately, in any jury situation, those things happen together. So then the jury discusses it for 10 or 12 minutes, and they take a vote. So that's why, simple pictures, good diagrams and titles, only 3 or so points. Every architect in the world would like to be as a generalist at some point in time in their career. But in this, if you show them 7 different buildings, it just looks like everybody else. But if you show 3 buildings that are doing exactly what you're doing and 2 other buildings that have been influenced by it, those are the kinds of things that make a difference. Ask if you've been recognized. Here's this ripple effect 2 more times. They do ask if you're active in the AIA, so it's not 100% essential. There are some great people who know involvement, but it is an AIA recognition after all, so it helps to be involved in the AIA. And this is not just reworking some of the things that said before: distinct body of work, notable contributions. These will be headlines in your bio, so you'll answer it that way. You'll mention it in your summary, and your writers will all address these things. Widespread recognition is more that will affect from being published in awards, and sharing or speaking or writing So recognition is if somebody wrote about you, sharing is if you wrote for somebody else. And then any committees, chairs, things you've been on for the AIA. In this case, both AIA committees are specifically related to what you're passionate about or what your point is, as well as other committees. You might as well get all those. And then finally, resources. If you go online, there's actually, I don't think this exists anymore. Fellowship fact. There is an sample submission online, and best examples. And actually, I switch up here. Oh, this is the picture from last year. This is the website. And on the website, there's actually let me go to the actual website. This is the fellowship page. And this page, you have the overview, which has all the stuff that was just in this presentation and describes the nominations. Hopefully you've all been here. The 2024 cycle, this page has been changed this year, so it's different than it was last year. This has the correct dates. And there you see the October 5th date that I would like die if all of you submitted on the 6th. And this is the new jury. This is the forbidden to contact the jury. And under resources, this is a sampleship application. And this is best practice and advice. And then finally, this is the past recipients. Where'd they go? Well, they were there 3 hours ago. Oh, you know what? Past, I take that back. There's also a directory that includes others who are fellows you can check into, and the demographic report on number of people in the different categories and things like that. They're just
Peter, were you looking for the past, some examples of previous applications?
Yeah, you said it's a button.
Yeah, it's under resources, just the last, I think if you keep scrolling down.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, and I wanted to point out Diana is the best resource to check out for object 2, and Justin is the best resource to check out for object 3. So we got here's 6 objects. Not that I PSA competitive. Anyway, so all this is available on there. This is the thing to fill out, and pretty much that's it. Question. Things that you guys who did it last year remember that I forgot.
I was going to mention the book that a lot of people recommend people, and I used it some.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. I didn't know about it.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned it in email.
I have to look at the name because I keep forgetting it. But if anybody wants it, I'm happy to give you my copy. It's called Architect Plus Action Equals Results, and it's by Rebecca Edmonds. I think it's a good resource, but you don't need to follow it to the letter of the law. I think she makes some good points, and a lot of this stuff Peter's already covered anyway. But anyway, I'll put my email in the chat. If anybody wants it, send me an email.
What is the last name of the author?
Thank you. It's Edmonds. So it's EDMUNDS. I ordered it on Amazon, so it's not.
She's been writing a lot of history about the college. She did a book on Black Fellows, or started, I don't know if she finished it, Black Tech Fellows. And we hired her, actually, the red book that everybody gets. You're at this award that's behind me. The president of the AIA gives you your medal, then gives you away to the College of Fellows, and you're given the book, which is sort of a Bible-sized book. That's history of the fellows, awards, other people, all the different classes. She arranged all that the last several years. So she is really close to this whole process. Where did you buy it? Through the AIA bookstore? Or?
I bought it on Amazon.
Oh,
Great.
so
The BSA has a few copies. If anyone is interested, just let me know.
good.
One little tip I'll throw out is that the writing should be in the third person. And this is probably self-evident to everybody, but when I had started writing, I was writing in the first person, and it was really difficult. And it got a lot easier when I was able to kind of distance myself from everything. So that, and just, I think, thinking about the jury process, the way Peter described it, I found helpful, because it is, somebody has to read 35 plus versions of this. And so thinking about what will set you apart, and then how to help them make your case in a very concise way. It's a good way to edit everything that you've done.
I'll add a couple more things. Because you don't want it to be too text heavy, you want to give some relief to people who are reviewing them. I found that it was helpful to put in some large quotes, especially in the exhibits, because you have people that worked on your projects or have worked with you or whatever, who maybe are not writing a letter, but can speak to your specific role and why you were successful in that role. Another thing you'll see in a lot of these examples is, I mean, the graphics, people use a lot of graphics to present statistics, if you have those, or maps to show like maybe where you've spoken, or, where your projects have been built, or things like that. So.
People use a lot of tricks too, like I think boldings and type, for those people who just read through all the titles, and they kind of get to that point by asking you to break things down into little clusters.
Can I ask if anyone has any advice for those of us who might be in public service under Object 4 and are struggling with some of the image requirements that are in the application book? There seem to be a lot of specific sort of tables required to list images and to provide copyright information. You could just
Sorry, I
talk a
never
little bit
heard that.
about your experience with that.
The examples will have all the objects. So I didn't look at the object for, because that wasn't obviously what I submitted under, but I would recommend looking there. I also know that if there's someone in specific that has gotten in the past, if you request it, they're pretty good usually about sharing it. So if there's someone that's had, say, a similar role and you're interested in seeing their application, you can ask and they'll provide it.
Oh, okay. I think I know at least one person who did it in Object 4 industry, Margaret Carney. She's at
I think she's one of the examples.
Yeah, she is. She's at Cornell.
Yeah,
But
okay.
if you look at the examples, I mean, I actually went in and registered. So I tried to look at what it actually looks like online. And there's this whole section on image submissions, because I think the AIA would like to have the rights to publish anything from the application. And you know what we do. I'm going after Object 4 industry for my work at UMass, and we just produce presentations all the time, and we put things up on the website, usually after asking architects for permission to use photographs of buildings that they might have taken or that their photographer might have taken. So that's not difficult. It's just all the other stuff that we generate. I don't know if anyone struggled with that component or not when you submitted the application. Maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Do we have anybody in for?
But I would think that
Yeah.
you could talk about
Yeah.
produce the image and the fact that UMass probably owns the rights, correct? I mean, that's just my guess, not knowing Object 4, but. Oh, you're on mute. Okay.
Yes, sorry. Yes, a lot of the times it's folks at University Relations or a photographer who works for University Relations. So, or someone in-house who did it 15 years ago. So.
I was
Maybe I'm
sort of
overthinking it.
struggling with the same thing last year, which is why I didn't finish submitting, getting the clearances. I was wondering if there was a specific form that was requested for all the photographs, which I know are in-house at DCAM, or my own photographs that I'm using. Is there a specific release form that is requested by the AIA?
You know, I'm gonna give you a quasi answer. For a while, there was a specific release wording that was stamped on each one, I thought. And then
Yeah.
later I thought they tried for a while to have one sheet with all of them on one sheet. And I thought they went back to just recommended text exhibit by exhibit.
Yeah. You were
Okay.
breaking up there a bit, but it sounded like you were saying that maybe you could do a single sheet, all the photos are on it, and the release of that, or instead having an acknowledgement on each of your submission sheets where there's a photograph.
Yeah, I think what happened was they tried having the single sheet and it didn't work. And I believe they've gone back to, it should be associated with the exhibit it's appropriate for. I suspect the thumb through everything back, but that's something that you should absolutely call that contact letter for honors and awards or email. They do a good job of answering those very specific things.
Okay.
Yeah, I had, so I was in Object 3, which is led the Institute. And so I had some exhibits that were the more traditional type architecture exhibits and some that were work that I had done as part of the National Ethics Council.
Mhm.
And so there are things, you know, the Code of Ethics was updated and the bylaws were updated. And I did talk about those. And I believe they're copyrighted by the AIA. And so I gave the AIA credit just to cover my bases, but I didn't necessarily have to, you know, mention everybody who worked on it. So I think first and foremost, if there is a copyright to it, you mentioned that. I think the instructions are pretty clear for photography, but anything else, I mean, I kind of, as a rule of thumb, just tried to credit anybody who really might have felt some ownership about being involved in it. I don't think they include the credit sheets with the examples that they have online, but if they do publish an image of something, that'll be at the bottom of it. I don't know if that helps. And then if you do have something that's pretty text heavy, like for the Code of Ethics, I pulled out salient things that we had worked on and provided summary versions of that to, you know, prevent the jurors from having to read legalese and figure out what in the world it meant.
I don't know if other people did this. I had two PDFs. So one was like Angela saying in the chat, you have a thumbnail and then you have who has the rights. I mean, I can share my screen if people want to see it, but you know, who photographed, who has the rights. And then the other one is actually that permission form. So like that was like, I had one PDF that was all the permission forms, and then one that was, it's like a contact sheet with all of the information. So,
Yeah, please share it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
okay.
it's something similar.
Let's see. Both of these are open. Okay. So this one is, am I able to share? Yeah, again.
I would just add while you're looking for that, Diana, that, you know, the application itself, let's say the portfolio or, you know, the subsequent work is one effort. But I think like getting all the signatures, the photographers, you know, all the letters, all the authorizations, it's a whole other exercise. I think leaving enough time for that is really important because I found that takes up time as well.
Yes, I would start that
Yes.
early.
It's something
Agreed.
that you can arm twist your sponsor into helping with.
So is that helpful? Is that everyone
Mm.
get what they need? You can email me for more information. I'm happy to share.
I will
Thank
say
you.
I also, yeah, and I did have some snapshots of publications,
Mhm.
like actually taking, you know, the whole page as it was laid out in the publication. And if you look at the masthead, some publications will allow you to reproduce it so long as you credit, you know, however they tell you to do it. Other ones ask you to ask for their permission. And I did that and they were all pretty responsive and happy to let me use it.
Yeah.
Does anybody have the name of a psychotherapist who deals with the angst fellowship submission? My sponsor texted me the other day and said, enough with the imposter syndrome. And I'm sure it's not just me. You know? That was an icebreaker. I didn't really mean it. Thank you.
Well, in all seriousness, I was joking that I had PTSD after I just turned it in because it
Yeah.
was it's a lot of work and it's
Yeah.
kind of all consuming.
I found that getting together with my sponsor over a meal or drinks definitely helped.
Yeah,
it's
it's
more
hard
likely
to
to
sort
be.
of track down those dates, names, and you're saying, care if it was September, October. And then I go, yeah, but I gotta know when that presentation was.
Peter, I hope it's okay to just have the right year.
I think it is.
I almost wish I had tried this earlier. I was looking at a 20-year chart of committee service, different committees. It's crazy.
Yeah, once I my whole list made, I thought, I'll save this and use it for something else. And then I did. Regret. You just keep in committee after committee after committee. Anything else? I will also try to follow up with Daniel on the Daniel Lobo, at least he was 6 months ago, was the head of honors and awards. I think the email they send you to is just a generic honors and awards at AIA.org. But they do a really good job of helping you get through this. I think the goal is we would like people to get their fellowship. And that's why we have these workshops and I think it's good for the Institute to get people who are doing a lot of different things out and about, showing that the Institute recognizes them and that these and people go, I didn't know architects did that. It's pretty good. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Good luck.